Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back to the show. We are joined today live by Reverend Carlene Appel. Excited to have you here today, live in person on Zoom, as well as here on the podcast. Pleasure to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good. How about yourself, Jillian?
I'm doing great, sweetheart. So you are, there's a lot. You're owner of your own company, New Day Pastoral Counseling Center. That's services, I should say. You're a spiritual counselor and mom and so much more. Please introduce yourself to our listeners today.
Yeah, I am a Reverend Carlene Appel. I own New Day Pastoral Counseling Services, and I also have a corporate division, Solutions. I provide counseling for, pastoral counseling. People wonder if it's religious. It doesn't have to be. Pastoral, you wouldn't believe what walks into pastors' offices. But and I used to be a pastor, but no, pastoral counseling. We handle all of life's areas, and we, as far as my business goes, I say Christ-centered because I'm following in the model that Jesus said, and that means he met everybody where they were at. There was no didn't stick his finger in people's faces, and people came to him because he was approachable, and he took time for people. He didn't hang out, in the temple all the time. He was busy going out, meeting people who had more needs. He says people who are well don't need a physician. So he came to serve. And so that's where we're at. I mean, I've taken care of everybody from the very religious to atheists. So, one of the I took care of called me at, wanted me there as she was actively dying. Just wanted somebody to hold her hand.
Yeah.
And I said, I think she had written a couple of books, and I said, would you like me to read to you from a couple of your books? No, she just wanted me to sit with her, hold her hand sometimes. But yeah. So anyway, this show and our next show, they are going to be focused on trauma and PTSD. For our veterans and our first responders. And it's a pretty big subject. So I figured this show would be for our veterans. And yes, but anyway, finishing up on New Day, I also am the first temporary agency in the United States for chaplains. You can call a temporary agency for a nurse, for a social worker, for a CNA, certified nurses assistant. Nothing for chaplains. The companies usually have to go out and hire them themselves, even though they don't have full-time work. And sometimes it's just as a stopgap. They're between chaplains, or they're new startups, because CMS, which is your Center for Medicare Medicaid Services, they require that you have a chaplain if you have 10 or more patients. And I believe that they require full-time. And that's tough for the new hospices, because they don't have a big census, and so anyway, so that's what my agency is there for. I've done hospice for 15 years. I love hospice. Fell in love with it. Exactly 3 months the day after my mom died. She had hospice, and yeah. I didn't know I'd end up in hospice. I had taken I don't know if I want to call it sabbatical. I had compassion fatigue, and I had to resign from my job, as a pastor. And I just didn't feel ready to go back yet. So I was going to do hospital chaplaincy, but they had all kinds of requirements,
Right?
You got your degree, you got your ordination, everything. They got more. It's like, I'm tired of jumping through the hoops. So hospice was great. And it was just like after 2 weeks, like, wow, this is a hand and glove fit. So anyway, but that's what the corporate side of it, solutions, is to help businesses that need a chaplain for temporary. And I have hospice agencies that I provide services to, and I'm adding staff, which is because, you know, once I'm gonna need more employees. So anyway, but I want to give a nice shout out today, since we're doing a show on veterans, to my cybersecurity expert. He let me find his explanation. You know, I had all my notes in order when I came.
Don't we all? In the meantime, let me just remind everyone how they can reach out to and check out the website. It's newdaypcs.org, newdaypcs.org. Go ahead.
And you know, it's funny, the last time I was, I did a television interview back when I was in entertainment, and my next door neighbor, I asked her, because she was a makeup artist for Elizabeth Arden. I said, can you make me up for TV? And it was like, oh my gosh, do they really put that much makeup on? I needed one of these, Jill.
You're so funny. Yes, it's like that thick. It is that thick.
Oh my gosh.
To get it off. Yeah.
And they canceled our interview for that day to reschedule. I had to go out to dinner with that. And I just, you know, I was like,
welcome to the world. I know, working in television for 20 years.
It really is that sick, huh?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. No wonder they can make anybody look good.
they can, and men wear the makeup too. Gosh. Don't be fooled.
But anyway, my very trusted cybersecurity guardian, he's a former Navy SEAL and naval intelligence veteran. He still does work for the military, but he also does private companies. That's Jose M. Garcia, owner of Cyber Ghost Security LLC in Plano, Illinois. And I trust him 110% to keep my business computer protected, because in naval intelligence, you have to think like a hacker. And our national security depends on, they got to stay 2 steps ahead of the black hats, you know, the bad hats. And so with Jose monitoring my system, I never worry about my sensitive HIPAA protected client information being compromised. So I'm very grateful. I trust him with my life. He's that good. And it's a veteran-owned business he has. He's a veteran. So I want to thank him and all our veterans, because of all that they give for our country. I want to talk about the PTSD end of it. You know, back in World War II, it was shell shock. They weren't supposed to talk about it. And then you had your Korean War. And the Korean War veterans, I have Korean War veterans tell me about, they get the PTSD, so they'll get that image of their first kill coming up in their mind. And the war, I mean, we in America, I mean, we have rules of engagement for our military. We don't harm women, children, babies, and old people. And they use them for human shields. They use them to attach bombs to, and you know, it's just not the same. And I remember a story was told to me. Korean War veteran. He came upon a safe house. The safe house was for enemies, and a whole family. Must have been a whole family. He had to kill the whole family. And I get other stories like that. And the biggest deterrent, because I trained in, I'm certified in trauma, and I'm also trained in critical incident stress management. And I guess the military was using the CISM for a while. And what I've been told is, you know, we're not comfortable in the group because we don't want to talk about what's happening. You know, we don't want to relive the scene in our mind or talk about it, because they relive it every time they have a flashback. And this is decades later, you know, and so there are new types of therapy that they don't have to talk about the details. One is cognitive processing therapy. and it's amazing. That's usually like 15 sessions at max, but a lot of veterans will say, 7-8 sessions, they're good.
Yeah.
So it's helped them work through that. And then you've got your EMDR, which is your eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And that involves you're doing movement either with fingers, or you've got a tapper. It's a specialized instrument they've made for just bilateral stimulation, and it works. It's amazing. It works. They don't have to talk about exactly what went on. They can reveal some detail and or very little, So our, we got our Korean War vets or World War II vets, and then we had our Vietnam vets. And in the last couple of years, I've been taking care of a lot more of my Vietnam vets, and because they're up and coming. The Vietnam War was actually from 1945
Wow.
to 1975.
Mm-hmm.
And we lost over 58,000 kids. 61% of U.S. soldiers killed in action were under 21.
Wow.
And I've taken care of veterans, ones who had to load the bodies, and they see those images, and the bad part was when they came back, they didn't get a hero's welcome, because there was a lot of anti-war sentiment, and really a lot of Vietnam vets wondered what they were there for, because it was more of a political thing than anything. Jane Fonda did that stunt, and really the veterans have not forgotten it, and some won't even let me say her name. So I have. Here's a picture.
Oh my goodness.
She's on Ho Chi Minh's anti-aircraft. She has apologized for it, but yes, these guys have to live with all this stuff. Okay, and in fact, let me show you some of these. These are children that have been conscripted by the Viet Cong to carry bombs and grenades to kill. Look at that. These are children. They're using children. They would put a grenade in a baby's blanket, and so that these 18-year-old kids are going and fighting, and they're coming up with these children, and they just, that goes beyond our sensibilities. I just saw in the newspaper on Daily Herald a week before, Constable did a story on the honor flight. There was a 100th annual honor flight to Washington, D.C. for the veterans to go to the National Monument. And they had their 100th flight since 2008. That started with 62 veterans. And the 100th honor flight, they had 102 Vietnam vets. They had 11 from Korean War and 3 from World War II. And there was a couple of brothers who were highlighted in here, and one of them mentions in uniform for his flight home from Vietnam more than 50 years ago, Bob Runts remembers getting a cool reception. Nobody would sit next to me on the plane, he says. He had to push aside a Hare Krishna member blocking his exit. My kids didn't even know that I was in the service until they were teenagers. That's how bad they were having to hide it. People were spitting on them, calling baby killers, and you didn't have a choice to go. You were drafted. There were volunteers, but the large number of them were drafted. My husband, he served in the Air National Guard for 13 years. And his number, he was coming near the end because he was in early 1970s. And his draft number was 41. That was the number of the house that he grew up in. 41. That's a low number. If you're 41, you're going. So he served in the Air National Guard, and he worked on the navigation communication systems for F-100s and A-10s. Oh, those are dynamite little planes. The Warthogs.
Mm-hmm.
I could, that would be another show. It's
Wow.
talk about the Warthogs. They come back from battle with holes in their wings, and they still fly, which is amazing. They're the cavalry. So when the ground troops see the A-10s come in, because they're tank killers, and they're cheering because the cavalry has arrived, and they're great airplanes. They look so clumsy, but I've watched them demonstration to go boop, boop. It's very precision.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we've got veterans that are hurting, and we have over 6,000. I just got the stats from the U.S. So over 6,000 veterans every year commit suicide. And in the midst of this, did you know there was a second Korean War? It was between 1966 and 1969, and the group of veterans in Gladstone, Michigan, which is way up in the Upper Peninsula there, a guy who wasn't even a veteran, he spearheaded this effort because these guys were forgotten, and the veterans were to Congress and all that just to get a monument, and they kept on getting sidelined and pushed away. And finally, last year, they got a monument dedicated to honor the second Korean DMZ war veterans that served and gave their lives for freedom, 1966 to 69, lest we forget. So I'm really proud of those guys for continuing to push. But but I do want to give an emergency number for veterans who are feeling suicidal. They can actually call 911 and ask for the veterans line, but let me get the number they can call.
Sure.
It's the Veterans Crisis Line is 1-800-273-8255.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a veteran who needs help, call 211. Veterans will be directed to veteran assistance, including legal aid, health, and financial resources. So I want to make sure they have that number. But what we do let me talk about the PTSD part. I would say it's like what happens is you get triggered. You've had a critical incident. Okay. And most people get through trauma, there's a lot of, affects your whole body, but there's a certain percentage who, they're not able to work through it. They're getting, the flashbacks just don't go away. Mm. And so what it is in your brain, your amygdala is your fight or flight. And so that's always, that's your survival mechanism. And it's just going off. It gets triggered by different things for like the Vietnam vets and other war vets, car backfiring, thunderstorm, anything. It could be somebody they see. And what it is your hippocampus is your brain's photo album. And so what happens when you get a flashback is your hippocampus is taking images from that old incident and put them right up front, and they're actually living it out. And so what we do is to get them through that. When we do these different therapies, is we want to get them to a place where they can stay grounded in the present. When one of these happens, is you're saying, I know I'm in my bed. I know I'm safe here. This is 2022.
But
I know that happened, and I was there, but I survived. It was an event that happened at a beginning, middle, and an end. And so they'll have the memory, but it's not going to trigger them feeling like they're there. They're going to be able to work through it as a memory. But that is ideally the point we want to get them to when they do that. So, any questions for me?
No, I mean, the fact that you've been working, and I know today's, shows in regards to veterans, I have to commend you on that. I know plenty, my grandfather, one included, World War II, he's passed since, but always
My
in our
dad too.
hearts and what
Yeah.
they do. And I just have a neighbor whose son's applying for the Army, and we were talking about his father's father was in, I'm not sure if it was which war it was, but he served over in Iraq. So
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
it was, and I had one little experience, which I got to go to Iraq myself in Kuwait back in 2009, 2010 to
Oh.
bring joy to the troops is what we did during the holiday season. I was working with a
USO.
television station, but basically like that, we
All right,
did
good
live
for you. You
interviews
go,
with
girl.
families and broadcasted live back at home satellite, and we spent our holidays there. And then also in Norfolk, Virginia, we went as well with the Navy down on the ships, and it's got to be just the most amazing. I mean, I commend so many men and women who do what they do and make that sacrifice to be away from their families and to serve. It is just, I've never been in the military, but I've witnessed it in work, and I feel so connected to those men and women, and my heart goes out to them. So I'm very grateful, and just a great topic because they really deserve so much. And
Yeah.
it bothers me that a lot of them can't get jobs, and there's some great foundations that are working with veterans now who are training them. I know a lot in the auto business are doing well and training them, because our vets come home and sometimes they don't have jobs, they don't have the means, and who's going to help them? And it's a great conversation today to really bring up, and if anyone's out there is listening who could help a vet, to hire a vet, my goodness, amazing.
Yeah, and again, Jose, my cybersecurity guy, if anybody is coming out of SEALs and counterintelligence, he'd be interested in talking with them. So Cyber Ghost Security LLC in Plano, Illinois. And those people they work by computer. I mean, they can work remotely. So it's not like they have to be there, in Illinois. They could be across the country and still able to work, as long as you have access to a computer, which who doesn't,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
so true.
But yeah, so I wanted to. This show was dedicated to our veterans. I'm very grateful. My dad was a veteran. Sorry. My father-in-law was a veteran. My dad was stateside, and my father-in-law served over in Corsica in South Africa. And this is a tool. He was the chief mechanic for his unit. This is a tool.
Beautiful.
This is a tool he made for the military, for airplanes, and the military uses it. It's still in use. This is
wow,
the tool. Yep. So it's on a plaque. It's on my desk here. But I'm really grateful, and I'm grateful for people like yourself, Gary Sinise.
He's done
so. My gosh, Lieutenant Dan. Yeah, and really, he really portrayed so well how the veterans were when they came back. He had 18-year-old kids. They weren't even, when they were drafted, they weren't even old enough to vote or have a drink. And here they are sending them off to combat, and a lot of them never made it. I mean, they were shot dead as they got off their as they deployed. And I don't want to neglect the soldiers from other wars, but it's just, this is the group I'm taking care of now because their time has come. There's not very many World War II people left, and there's Korea and Vietnam. But yeah, all those who fought in Afghanistan and in between Second Korean War and everything, you're all important. And what people need to realize is that all the freedoms we enjoy in this country, even the freedom to put down the country, it was bought with the blood of soldiers who gave that ultimate, they made the ultimate sacrifice. And even the ones who came back, they gave of their lives. And so I'm glad that, we're seeing more respect for the military. Though I will say there's patches. I had a Vietnam vet that they wouldn't even serve him at his VFW. Really, this is it was like 2021, and they wouldn't serve him. They ignored him, and they don't even recognize Vietnam vets on their holiday parades. That's tragic. But thank you, Jill, for what you do for having gone over there.
I was an honor. It was an honor. And don't worry, I don't want to talk more about me. I want to talk about you. We are actually out of time. My goodness.
Yeah, I know.
Unbelievable. I didn't realize it. We're
I'm looking at the
conversation. So tell us how we can reach out to you, please. Thank you.
Okay, you can reach out to New Day Pastoral Counseling Services at www.newdaypcs.org, or you can call me at 630-557-6229. And you can always do the contact on my website. I just redesigned my whole website. Looks gorgeous.
I saw it. Thank you for adding me to it. That was sweet. I thank you. That was great. Great shot, by the way. Thank you. And yours too, for your weekly podcast. Thank you for adding us to that. I did notice that.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so grateful.
Thank
you.
We
all help each other out. And so I would have never had a second daughter named Jill Marie. So
thank you so much for your time today, for enlightening us, and to all the vets out there. We really do appreciate you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for your service. We appreciate you. All right. You take care.
You too.
See you next week. We'll talk about first responders next week.
Beautiful.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you can now listen live on the MyTuner Radio and online Radio Box apps for iOS, Android, and the Amazon App Store. Or check us out online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on onlineradiobox.com/US so you don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.